everybody, welcome back to Kielbasa Corner, where today I am making these long deer wieners, or to be more accurate, I am making this venison Debreziner that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. This recipe is traditionally made with beef, but I have got some great fresh venison to work with, and I always prefer that to beef in my sausage. But the venison is nearly completely lean, so I've got to add some fat to that, so I've got some nice fatty pork belly here as well. And this would be kind of the medium fatty pork, not the super fatty, not the center cut. Just somewhere in between there. And the recipe is also usually heavier on pork than beef, or in this case venison, but I am flipping those ratios around because I want this one to be about the venison. So I've got 2,500 grams of venison, that is 5.5 pounds, and I have 1 kilogram of pork belly here, and that is 2.2 pounds. And the first thing I will do is trim up the silver skin off of my venison. Then I'll get both of these cut up in chunks for my grinder, and I'll pop them in the freezer for a while until they firm up and are nice and icy cold. Now the idea here is to hit somewhere between 25 and 30% fat content on the sausage. That'll give you a nice succulent results. This is a very fine grained sausage, so use the smallest size plate you have. Mine is a 4.5 millimeter, which is not ideal. I would actually like to go probably down to like a 3, but whatever plate you're using, do a double grind on that to get it as fine as you can. Now let's take a look at the spice bill for this slinky link. And I'll be breaking this down by weight, but if you want the figures in cups and spoons, I will do my best to place the conversions in the description of the video. And those measurements will be slightly rounded because weight and volumetric measurements don't line up perfectly, but I'll get close enough that only a seasoned sausage connoisseur will be able to detect the difference. So let's get started with the salt, and I'm going with a salt content of 1.8% today. So for my 3,500 grams of meat, that's going to be 63 grams of plain non-iodized salt. I made a batch at 1.5%, and it wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, but if you're minding your salt intake, it did work. It was just a bit bland for my salty American palate. Now I've got some very good sweet paprika here. This is going to be the dominant flavor in this one, and this paprika I actually got from the source in Hungary, and it's very aromatic, very good stuff, but you use the best that fits your budget and you're gonna do just fine. And that is 26 grams of that sweet paprika. Now let's get in there with some fresh ground black pepper, and I grind my spices fresh whenever possible. A freshly opened container of pre-ground spice does pretty well, but they're much more aromatic and flavorful right out of the grinder. And this is 18 grams of fresh ground black pepper. I'm going to go with fresh garlic today. This is 18 grams, which as you can see is 5 cloves of this size, but garlic cloves come in a variety of sizes, which is another good reason to weigh your ingredients. And if you want to use garlic powder, just cut that amount in half and you're going to be pretty close. Now for a bit of cheer, I have 7 grams of fresh allspice and a cheeky 7 grams of cayenne pepper for a little bite. I'm gonna need some binder, and I'm using plain old grocery store non-fat powdered milk. This is gonna give the sausage a little protein boost that'll help you get a nice tight bind and help retain a little bit more moisture. And you may use high heat dry milk. It's got a little more protein in it, but this cheap stuff works very well too. And this is the cure. This is pink cure number 1. Always use cure number 1 and not cure number 2 with a quick cured sausage like this. Save that number 2 cure for your dry cured meats. And the cure goes in at a rate of 0.25%. And I use the weight of the meat and any liquid that I add in there. And this is 9.5 grams of that pink cure number 1 because I am going to be adding in a little bit of liquid to help with mixing and make the stuffing a little easier. This is going to be a small gauge sausage, and the smaller the casing, the more pressure it takes to stuff it. So a little liquid will help that go easier for you. And you could go with water or wine, but I am going to go with a nice hoppy beer. I'm gonna need 350 milliliters of this beer, and one 12-ounce can is 355 milliliters, so there'll be a little sip left over for the chef. Now I'll mix all the dry ingredients together so they distribute nice and evenly, and I'm gonna smash the garlic right into the meat mix to make sure that that gets spread around very well. Ice cold bowl, ice cold meat, ice cold beer. So now it's time to get Big Beatrix loaded up to mix up this wiry wiener. So you want to make sure everything stays very cold throughout this process. And you want to mix it until it is very, very sticky. Now, I've got the luxury of using Big Beatrix. That was a heck of a moving sale buy. But, like most folks, I began doing this by hand. And you just gotta get in there and work it out. It's gonna take a long time. It's gonna hurt your hands because it's so cold, but it can be done. So I want to get this into a non-reactive container, so plastic or glass. I'll cover it up with a little bit of plastic wrap. And then this goes into the refrigerator overnight to let that cure work its magic. And I'm going to be using natural sheep casings on this one, so these come packed in salt and they need to rehydrate, so I'll get these soaking overnight as well. Bright and early on another beautiful sausage Sunday here at Kielbasa Corner. My meat is all cured, I've got my casings hydrated, and these are 20 to 30 millimeter sheep casings. So I'm using my 12mm stuffing horn, which is right around 7/16 of an inch. And I always use a horn that is much smaller than the casing that I'm using, and that is to prevent overstuffing. The closer the horn is to the size of the casing, the faster your sausage is going to come out and fill that thing up. And if it gets overstuffed, that can lead to breakage, and it'll also make it more difficult to form your links, especially with delicate casings like these sheep casings. The sausage is gonna come together pretty quickly today. After I get them stuffed and let them hang for a little bit to dry, I'm only gonna smoke these for between 30 and 60 minutes, much less than I smoke a lot of other sausages. So I think everything is ready to go. Corn Pop is here to deal with any air bubbles that would get caught in this. So let's lock and load and crank out this svelte stick.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Welcome into the sausage closet. Now the first step here is to start bringing these up to temp and get the casings nice and dry. So I've got the closet set to about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've got a fan circulating air around here, and we're going to leave these in here for 45 minutes or so until the casings are very dry, and then we're going to take them out into an already hot and smoky smoker. After your casings are nice and dry, it's time to move things out and into the smoker. Now I've got my smoker preheated to 150 degrees Fahrenheit and some water down in the water pan. And this is going to be a short smoke. These are going to be a lightly smoked sausage. Then we're going to finish them off by poaching them. So I'm running hickory smoke today, and I'm going to smoke these for just about 45 minutes, just to get a little bit of color and a little bit of flavor in there. And I'll be keeping track of the temperature with the Chef's Temp S1 that I recently installed on this smoker. We're just about done smoking these. It's been 30 minutes or so. I'm gonna give them a little bit longer. I like a little more smoke on them, but take a quick peek. They're just starting to get a little redness to them. Spread those out a little bit so we get that smoke all around. And I'll give these just about 10 more minutes, and then we're gonna get them inside and into the already preheated water bath. They got a nice little smoky color to them, not too much. We're going to get these right down into the water bath. Of course, you can do this on the stovetop if you can control your temperature. There we go. Now I've got my water bath set to 176 degrees Fahrenheit, which is higher than the finish temperature I want. A lot of people want to set their sous vide to the exact temperature, so you don't have to worry about it, but with sausages, you do want to get them done a little quicker or they can lose some moisture. So I set it a little bit higher, and then these are going to go pretty quickly. It's probably going to take about 20 minutes in here to get these to an internal temperature of between 155 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. But I do need to prepare a cold water bath because these are going to come right out of here and into that chiller. There we go, we're right there now. I want to get these out of here and into some cold water to stop any carryover cooking. Normally I would have ice in there, but I don't have any ice today, so I'm gonna get them into the cold water. Then I'm gonna take this over to the sink and just kind of run cool water over there for about 10 minutes to get those things all the way cooled down. Those are some beautiful long deer wieners. Now the final thing I'm going to do is just give them a short stay here in the sausage closet. It's now down at room temperature. I'm just going to leave them in there long enough to get those casings all dried out. And I do like to let the flavor of my sausage develop a little bit, so I'll put them in the refrigerator overnight and we'll try these out tomorrow. Now those are looking good, and now it's finally time to see how we did. Check out that bite. Yeah. This sausage has a fabulous texture. It's not as smooth and puffy as an emulsified sausage like most hot dogs, but much finer and more mouth-melty than a bratwurst. The sheep casings are thin, so they don't have the big crack and pop you get with a hog casing. These have a wonderful crisp bite to them after they're grilled or fried. It is so nice. You should know that sheep casings are much more delicate than hog casings, so they're inherently more challenging to stuff. So if you're just getting started making your own sausage, I wouldn't recommend using sheep casings right off the go. Make a few recipes with hog casings, and then after you have a bit of a feel for stuffing sausage, then you can get into the sheep casings, and when you do, make sure you've got a few extra casings ready to go, because you're very likely to have some breakage. Now let's talk about the flavor, and it is excellent. This is not a sausage that I'm gonna find at any store or smokehouse around where I live. There is a vast sea of sausage varieties, and you're not going to be able to try them all without traveling the world or making your own. So in a case like this, where I've got no point of reference, I'll search out a few recipes and take what I can from them, and then I add in my own flair. For this one, I found some German recipes and I made up a batch, and like I spoke about earlier, the flavor was there, but it was a bit bland for my taste, so I modified the recipe by increasing the salt and some of the spices, and then I added the cayenne to the recipe because I wanted a bolder flavor. And it worked out so well. It's a very savory sausage. No one flavor really jumps out of the mix, but they all work together very well. It's lightly kissed with smoke, and that lets the flavor of the meat come through beautifully. It's kind of like the best hot dog you've ever had with a nice crispy skin added on. I could absolutely see tossing one of these in a hot dog bun with all the fixings, maybe even double stacking them in there. But just like this, with some bread and some good mustard on the side, it is fantastic. I'm so happy I tried this, and I hope the video inspires you to try it too, and join me sailing the sausage sea. Thanks for watching.